Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why and how of newspaper reading. Now we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 19th of January 2019, and the news that would be covered today is given on the screen, and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. And so now with this, let us start with the first article. Now we have taken this editorial from the editorial page on page 6. Now what this article talks about is about the independence of the Supreme Court through the collegium system. And within that context, the article focuses mainly upon the issue of reciprocity. Now you should see this article from the perspective of GS paper 2 within the section governance and within the subsection structure, organization and functioning of the judiciary and important aspects of governance, transparency and accountability. Now let us understand first as to what the author means by the term reciprocity. Now the author has defined reciprocity as a universal norm which is seen in human societies. And under this principle of reciprocity, individuals are obligated to return the favor which they have received. Whereby what it generally means is that people should help those who have helped them, and people should not injure those who have also helped them. And therefore in simple terms, it means that if I do you a favor, then you have to return that favor. And it is within that context that the author has said that Indian judges are not supposed to have any form of political affiliation, whereby rather it is expected of Indian judges to not have any form of political affiliation. But what the author is trying to highlight is that the government is everywhere, and even judges, as being fellow human beings, do get influenced by the politics that is undertaken by the government in power. Now within that context, the author has highlighted a particular view which was given by Justice J.S. Kehar in the NGAC case in 2015, or what is called the National Judicial Appointment Commission's case. And in this case, Justice J.S. Kehar had highlighted that American judges who are appointed by the President of the United States feel obligated to the President of the United States for nominating them to the Supreme Court of the United States. And therefore what the author is trying to highlight from this is of reciprocity in judicial appointment, whereby what happens in the United States is that the President appoints the judges to the Supreme Court of the United States, and then these judges feel obligated to the President whenever a case that involves the President of the United States or the US government comes to the US Supreme Court. And it is within that context that the author has highlighted 4 reasons as to being the dangers of reciprocity in judicial appointments. Whereby first, it undermines the independence of the judges, whereby as the author has highlighted by referencing the judicial appointment of the judges of the US Supreme Court. If judicial appointments are carried out only by the executive, then the judges will feel obligated to the government that have nominated them to the Supreme Court, and thereby it undermines the independence of those judges. The second danger highlighted by the author is that it raises doubt about the credibility of the judiciary. Now let's say if any verdict has been given by the Supreme Court which has gone in favor of the government in power, then it would be assumed because of reciprocity that the judges have been biased towards the government in power. The third danger highlighted by the author is that it undermines the effective check that the judiciary has over the executive. Now as you already understand that most democracies such as India, the United States among others, have various check and balances so as to avoid any form of abuse of power by the executive. However, again, if there is reciprocity in judicial appointments, it would undermine the effective check that the judiciary would have over the functioning of the executive. And the fourth and the last danger that the author has highlighted with regards to reciprocity in judicial appointment is that it decreases the confidence of the people in the functioning of the judiciary. So now hopefully up till here you've understood as to what is reciprocity, what is meant by reciprocity in judicial appointment, and lastly you also understand the various dangers that have been highlighted by the author if the concept of reciprocity is applied in judicial appointments. And now it is within this context that the author has given the current judicial view of reciprocity in judicial appointments, whereas Justice Kehar in the National Judicial Appointment case of 2015 had asserted that he preferred exclusion of the political executive from the appointment of judges, wherein Justice Kehar had said that he preferred the exclusion of the political executive from the appointment of judges so as to avoid a feeling of gratitude or reciprocity towards the government by the judges, since this feeling of gratitude or reciprocity would impact the independence of the Indian judiciary. And therefore this is the current judicial view on reciprocity which has been highlighted by the author. So now hopefully with this you have understood as to what this article talks about and have a comprehensive understanding to the term reciprocity within judicial appointments and what is the dangers with regards to reciprocity within judicial appointments. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 5. Now what this article highlights is that only 66% of the target of the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin has currently been achieved. However, the facts from this article in itself are not required to be understood from a UPSC examination perspective. And what you need to know is understand about the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, especially with regards to your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. But before understanding as to the feature of this government scheme, let us first understand on how questions have been asked in previous prelims examination on government schemes. Now before starting and understanding the various features from the perspective of your prelims examination, what we'll do first is understand on how government initiatives and government schemes are asked within the prelims exam. So if you take a look at the prelims examination paper of 2018, a question was asked on the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, wherein the first aspect that this question asked was the implementing agency or the ministry of the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. The second aspect that it asked was the purpose of the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. And the third aspect that it asked was a unique feature with regards to the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Now the correct answer to this question is C, 2 and 3, wherein the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana is the flagship scheme of the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Now moving forward, if you take a look at the prelims examination paper of 2017, wherein this paper had asked the various objectives of the National Nutrition Mission, wherein the correct answer to this question is A, 1 and 2. Apart from this, in this question, the implementing agency of the National Career Service was asked, and in addition to the purpose of the National Career Service. In addition, a question was asked as to the purpose of the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, wherein the purpose of the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan is to connect institutions of higher education with local communities. And lastly, if you take a look at the prelims examination paper of 2016, it had asked the purpose of the Uday scheme, which was to provide financial turnaround revival of power distribution companies. Apart from this, it asked for the purpose of the Rashtriya Gramin Abhiyan, and the correct answer to this question is C, to eradicate the practice of manual scavenging. And apart from this, the 2016 paper had also asked a question on Stand Up India scheme in terms of its purpose and in terms of one of its implementing agency, where the correct answer to this question is C, both 1 and 2. Moving forward, it also asked a question on the purpose of the mission Indradhanush, wherein the purpose of the mission Indradhanush is for the immunization of children and pregnant women. And apart from this, it had also asked the purpose of the SWIM initiative of the Government of India, wherein it intends to provide affordable and quality education for the citizens for free. Now, these are some of the questions that have been asked in the prelims examination within the past 3 years on various initiatives and schemes of the Government of India, wherein the main aspects that have been asked is the purpose of the scheme, second, the implementing agency, and lastly, one of the unique features of the scheme. And by understanding these three purviews of any government schemes, you would be able to answer any question in the 2019 prelims examination on government schemes and government initiatives. So now let us understand about the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin. Now there are 6 main points that you need to know about the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin from the perspective of your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. Wherein the first point that you need to know is that this scheme has been restructured from the earlier Indira Awas Yojana, and this was done in the year 2016. And the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin is under the purview of the Ministry of Rural Development. The second point that you need to remember is that this scheme intends to provide housing for all by the year 2022. And this scheme intends to provide housing for all by providing a Pakka house to first houseless householders and secondly to those households who are currently living in Kacha house. So you have to understand that this scheme provides housing or a Pakka house to two different groups of people. First to people who are currently houseless and secondly to those people who are currently living in a Kacha house. The third point is that the immediate objective of this scheme is to cover 1 crore households which are currently living in Kacha houses in 3 years from 2016 till 2019. And it is within this context that the article has highlighted that only 66% of this objective has currently been fulfilled. The fourth main point that you need to know is that the cost of per unit assistance provided for each Pakka house is to be shared between both the central and the state governments, whereby it would be in the ratio of 60 to 40 in the plain areas and in the ratio 90:10 in the northeastern and the Himalayan states. The fifth point that you need to know is that the assistance for construction of toilet, pipe drinking water, electricity connection, LPG gas connection will be provided to these Pakka house which have been formed under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin from different government schemes. So let's say the construction of the toilet would be provided under the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan Gramin. The LPG gas connections might be provided under the Ujjwala Yojana, while an electricity connection might be provided under the Saubhagya scheme. And therefore, this is an important fact that you need to know is that under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, only the house is currently being provided, and other aspects that make a house a home, such as the construction of a toilet, pipe drinking water, electricity connection, are being provided from different government schemes. And therefore, an individual would have to apply to all of these schemes in a separate manner. And therefore, an important aspect through which the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin could be improved upon is to have the convergence of the various government schemes. And now the sixth and the last point that you need to understand about this scheme, especially with regards to your upcoming prelims examination, is that the selection of the beneficiary for this scheme will be from the housing deprivation parameters which are provided under the socio-economic and caste census of 2011. And this data which has been provided under the socio-economic and caste census would also be verified by the Gram Sabha. And one unique feature of this selection procedure is that this scheme does not select the beneficiary from among the BPL households, whereby what happens is that every state currently already has a list of various individuals or households which are below the poverty line. However, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin does not select the beneficiary from the list of the BPL household, whereby it selects the beneficiaries from the socio-economic and caste census. So now hopefully you understood the important parameters about the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin from the perspective of your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. And therefore with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 3. Now what this article talks about is that after 2 years after the Rajasthan government had proposed setting up of captive breeding centers for the Great Indian Bustard, the wild population of the Great Indian Bustard still continues to be critically endangered, whereby only about 50 Great Indian Bustards currently reside within the Jaisalmer district and account for 95% of the total world population of the Great Indian Bustard. And it is within that context that the article has highlighted that no immediate action is being undertaken so as to save the Great Indian Bustard from going extinct, especially within the context of Rajasthan, whereby the state bird of Rajasthan is the Great Indian Bustard itself. However, the government has not undertaken any form of immediate recovery plan of setting up of captive breeding centers for the Great Indian Bustard. However, what is required for you to understand from this article are various aspects about the Great Indian Bustard, especially with regards to your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. However, before understanding the various features of the Great Indian Bustard, let us understand on how questions have been asked in previous prelims examination on various animals. Now, previously several questions have been asked in your prelims examination with regards to a particular animal, while questions on animals such as gharials, Great Indian Hornbill, Khadai Camel, and others have been asked in your prelims examination. And questions on animals within the prelims examination have generally been asked with regards to their status under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, their habitat, or one of its unique features. And apart from this, for your prelims examination, also try to understand as to the reference of the animal within the IUCN list or any other major international protection scheme. And therefore, by understanding the habitat of an animal, its status under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, and lastly, by understanding the unique feature of that animal, it would provide you with a comprehensive coverage for your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. And therefore, by understanding these 5 points with regards to any animal which is referenced in the Hindu newspaper or the Indian Express or any other paper that you follow, you would be able to have a comprehensive coverage for your prelims examination of 2019. So now let us understand about the Great Indian Bustard. Now the main habitat of the Great Indian Bustard is the Indian subcontinent. And within the Indian subcontinent, it is found in mainly 2 regions, first being the Thar Desert in the northwest part of the Indian subcontinent, and second being the Deccan area in the Indian peninsula. However, what has happened now is that the main habitat of the Great Indian Bustard has now been confined to the state of Rajasthan, whereby 95% of the Great Indian Bustard found in the Indian subcontinent are located within the state of Rajasthan. However, fewer than 15 to 20 birds are still found in Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh. The second aspect that you need to know is that the Great Indian Bustard is protected under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Apart from this, the Great Indian Bustard is listed as critically endangered in the IUCN list and is also protected under the Appendix 1 of the CITES Convention. And the last aspect that you need to know about the Great Indian Bustard is that conservation program with regards to this animal is being undertaken under the Program of Integrated Development of Wildlife Habitats, which is a program being undertaken by the Ministry of Environment. Now, this integrated development of wildlife habitat is undertaken by the Ministry of Environment, whereby the central government provides technical and financial assistance to states and union territories for the protection of a wildlife habitat of particular animals. And it is within that context that the Ministry of Environment is helping the state of Rajasthan for the conservation efforts of the Great Indian Bustard under the integrated development of wildlife habitat. Now, these are the 5 main points that you need to know about the Great Indian Bustard from the perspective of your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. And therefore, now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 6. Now, what this editorial talks about is that it supports the decision of the Supreme Court to push the government of India to establish the Lokpal. Now, what has happened is that an 8-member search committee, which is being headed by a former Supreme Court judge, Justice Ranjana Prakash Desai, has been constituted, whereby this committee would shortlist eligible candidates who then can be selected for the position of the Lokpal. And the search panel would give the names of the shortlisted eligible candidates for the position of Lokpal to the selection committee, whereby the selection of the chairperson and the members of the Lokpal shall be through a selection committee which would consist of the Prime Minister, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, the Leader of the Opposition of the Lok Sabha, and it would also include the Chief Justice of India or a sitting Supreme Court judge who has been nominated by the Chief Justice of India as an alternative to his position. And lastly, the selection committee would also include an eminent jurist who would be nominated by the President of India. However, what has happened till now is that the Lokpal Lok Ayukt Act of 2013 has not been implemented. And this was because there was no leader of opposition in the current Lok Sabha. And therefore, the selection committee, which consists of the leader of the opposition of the Lok Sabha, could not be formed. However, in April of 2018, the Supreme Court had said in a judgment that the Lokpal appointment process should not be stalled due to the absence of the leader of opposition. And it is within that context that a search panel for the Lokpal under the Justice Ranjana Prakash Desai has been formed. And what the Supreme Court has done now is ask this 8-member search committee to recommend a panel of names before the end of February. And it is within this context that this editorial has supported the move of the Supreme Court to ask the 8-member search committee to recommend a panel of names before the end of February. However, you have to understand that this news is currently in transition, wherein we'll have to wait and see till February as to what are the names given by the search committee for the Lokpal. However, with regards to your upcoming prelims examination of 2019, what you need to know as to who are the members of the selection committee for the Lokpal. And therefore, now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this article from page 18. Now, what this article talks about is that a private company in Japan has sent a satellite into space, and the mission of this satellite is to deliver the world's first artificial meteor shower. Now, this is being undertaken by a private Japanese company which has sent a satellite into space using the Epsilon 4 rocket system of Japanese Space Agency. Now, the first thing that you need to understand is what is the difference between a meteor, a meteorite, and a meteorite. Now, a meteorite is a rocky or an iron debris which is floating in space, while a meteor is a rock which has entered into Earth's atmosphere. And when this meteor falls through the atmosphere of Earth, it burns up. When this meteor burns up in the atmosphere, it releases a streak of light and dust within the atmosphere. However, if a small portion of this meteor does not burn up in the atmosphere and lands on the surface of the Earth, it is known as a meteorite. And it is within that context that a private Japanese company is intended to create the first artificial meteor shower. And if you take a look at this video, when a meteor falls through the atmosphere of Earth, it is also known as a shooting star. And what this Japanese company is intending to do is to create an artificial meteor shower, whereby this company is intending to use an artificial meteor shower which would be reflective of fireworks. And this company intends to create the first artificial meteor shower through the use of plasma emission, whereby what this company intends to do is send a satellite into space, and this satellite would create various tiny chemical balls, and these tiny chemical balls would be released into the Earth's atmosphere. And when these tiny balls fall through the Earth's atmosphere, they would be releasing a streak of light. And these chemical balls would be releasing a streak of light through the use of plasma emission. However, you have to understand that this news is currently in transition, wherein this company is yet to perform an actual artificial meteor shower. But hopefully, you've understood the main focus of this article. And so, now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this article from page 18. Now, what you need to remember from this article is given in the headline itself that India ranks third in research papers on artificial intelligence. However, what is extremely important for you to understand, especially with regards to UPSC mains examination, is of a recently released paper by the Niti Aayog on artificial intelligence. Now, the Niti Aayog had released a discussion paper in June of 2018 on artificial intelligence. And this complete paper of the National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence was covered in the Daily News Simplified of 2nd of July. Now, this paper of the Niti Aayog on artificial intelligence was understood from 6 different perspectives. First, with regards to related terms of artificial intelligence such as machine learning and deep learning, the highlighted priority areas given in the report for artificial intelligence in India. Third, being the barriers to artificial intelligence adoption in India, which was given in the report. The fourth point from the report, which was also discussed in the Daily News Simplified, was the outreach for artificial intelligence adoption in India. The fifth point that was discussed was the use of artificial intelligence in the field of agriculture. And the sixth and the final point that was discussed in the Daily News Simplified video of 2nd of July, with regards to the Niti Aayog report on artificial intelligence, was the privacy issues of artificial intelligence with regards to India, wherein the first 3 perspectives were covered from the perspective of GS Paper 3 within the subsection Science and Technology, while the fifth perspective of artificial intelligence in the field of agriculture was covered from the perspective of GS Paper 3 within the subsection E-Technology in the aid of farmers. And lastly, the privacy issues with regards to artificial intelligence was covered within the section Basics of Cybersecurity and Challenges to Internal Security through Communication Network, also from the perspective of GS Paper 3 within the section Security. And what you can do is watch the Daily News Simplified video of 2nd of July to understand all of these perspectives from the Niti Aayog report on artificial intelligence from the perspective of your UPSC examination. And what I'll do is provide you with a link to the Daily News Simplified video of 2nd of July in the description section given below. Now, as some of you may already know, the Focus magazine contains a section called the Contributor Zone. And this Contributor Zone contains several essays which have been written by the Rouse team. And in the August edition of the Focus magazine, a contributory article was provided on the National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence, which was given out by the Niti Aayog. And this report was covered in the contributor article from the perspective of GS Paper 3 and within 4 different subsections. First being technology, economic development, e-technology in the aid of farmers, and lastly security. And as we already understand that most of you do not have access to the August edition of the Focus magazine, so what I'll do is provide you the complete article that had been written in the contributor zone on National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence in the PDF link given below. And therefore you can access the complete summary of the Niti Aayog report on artificial intelligence which had been provided in the contributor zone article. And so now with this, let us move on to the next section. Now here are 2 questions for your practice, and what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now with regards to question number 1, the correct answer is C, 2 only. Now as you already understand, statement number 1 is incorrect because the Pradhan Awas Yojana Gramin is under the Ministry of Rural Development. However, you have to understand that the Pradhan Awas Yojana Urban is under the purview of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And this is an important difference that you need to remember for your prelims examination, that the Pradhan Awas Yojana Gramin is under the purview of the Ministry of Rural Development, while the Pradhan Awas Yojana Urban is under the purview of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Statement number 2 is correct, while statement number 3 is incorrect because the beneficiaries of the Pradhan Awas Yojana are not provided free LPG and electricity connection under this scheme. But what they can do is take advantage of other government schemes such as the Ujjwala Yojana for free LPG connections or the Saubhagya scheme for electricity connections. And therefore the correct answer to question number 1 is C, 2 only. While regards to question number 2, the correct answer is C, 1 and 3. Now the tiger is protected under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, while the Great Indian Bustard is also protected under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. And apart from this, the Great Indian Bustard is also listed as critically endangered in the IUCN list. And therefore statement 1 and 3 are correct. However, with regards to statement number 2, it is not only found in India, whereby the Great Indian Bustard have been known to be found in Pakistan also. Since as you already understand that the Great Indian Bustard is found in the Indian subcontinent, which includes the country of Pakistan. And they're majorly found in the northwest region, in particular the Thar Desert, and the Thar Desert is a border between India and Pakistan. And therefore the Great Indian Bustard is also said to be found currently in Pakistan. And therefore with regards to question number 2, the correct answer is C, 1 and 3. Now apart from this, there are 2 more questions for your practice, and as you already understand, pause this video, solve both of these questions and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now with regards to question number 3, the correct answer is A, 1 only, whereby the Prime Minister is part of the selection committee of the Lokpal. However, it is not the chairman of the Rajya Sabha but the Speaker of the Lok Sabha who is also a part of the selection committee of the Lokpal. And similarly, it is the leader of the opposition of the Lok Sabha who is a part of the selection committee of the Lokpal. And therefore the correct answer is A, 1 only. With regards to question number 4, the correct answer is A, that both meteor and meteorite enter and burn through the Earth's atmosphere. And therefore the correct answer to question 4 is A. And now with this we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.